Hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma 231 here, back in to talk about Kagurabachi, chapter number 77. This chapter is titled, No Longer Relevant. And normally I like to sit down here and make the joke about like, hey, Kagurabachi chapter titles don't really make too much sense, but in the grand scheme of things, this chapter title does make a whole lot of sense for the main point of like, hey, we see Hiruhiko's sort of fate. I'm going to say fate in this chapter, even though I think that is a bad wording to use for how Hiruhiko is sort of shown and described here, because as you will be getting to spoilers for the Kagurabachi chapter, we see that Hiruhiko ends up getting taken out of the bigger three-way battle here between Samura, Hiruhiko, and of course Chihiro, all here in this moment. But more than that, this chapter title is absolutely hilarious to me because of its placement on the color two-page spread of this chapter. Because as we see, we have a absolutely brilliant two-page spread this week. Of course, Kagurabachi did get the lead color page in Weekly Shonen Jump issue number 22-23 of 2025, which is just like, hey, it's really awesome to see. Of course, it didn't get the magazine cover because it's like, hey, it's a combined issue, so all of the characters, all of the main characters in Jump are on the cover of it, but either way, what we see here is pretty much just a really awesome image of Samura, Kunishige, and Kiora. And underneath all of them, we see all of their children. Of course, Samura has Iori. Kunishige Rokuhira has Chihiro, and Kiora has Hakuri, right? And it's really funny because it's like a really beautiful, honestly, probably one of my favorite pieces of Kagurabachi art that we have ever gotten from Takeru Hokuzono, just because of like the style it's painted in. It just is so incredibly beautiful, and it just looks absolutely so cool to see like Chihiro in the stance, two swords on his side. He's in like the Kabunagi suit ninja attire stuff. We see Iori there holding a sword in her hand, and Hakuri sort of like just squatting down, both of his hands on his knees, just like getting ready to rumble and tumble and all of that, right? But getting to the whole point here, the chapter 77, No Longer Relevant, is literally positioned right next to Hakuri's face, which is just like, come on. Of course, we know that he's currently recovering with the storehouse and everything after all the events of the first part of the Sword Bear assassination arc, everything at the, oh crap, what was that place called? The Shinkotsuji Temple and all that various stuff. But it's just really funny to see this sort of be portrayed this way. It's like, hey, Hakuri's no longer relevant. Don't tell me about that, right? But either way, this is just a really cool color page. Because like I said, it's just drawn in that art style that Takeru Hokuzono absolutely excels in. And also, I should mention this right now. Of course, you guys have been seeing it on screen this entire time. But hey, we had a brand new Kagurabachi volume drop this past week. Or it's not currently out yet. It is one of the May volumes for Shonen Jump, so it'll be coming out at the beginning of May, but we pretty much got the cover reveal of it. And it's just really cool seeing Samura there on the cover of it, of course, volume number 7. It looks absolutely amazing for sure. And also, I think this is the old version of the volume cover. I think they slightly altered a few of the colors and maybe resized a thing or two, and that will be the version that actually goes to print. But this was pretty much just like the first draft of like, hey, this is the first idea of what we got, of what this volume cover would look like, and hey, it does look extremely, extremely cool. But yeah, really, aside from the amazing color page, we just have an amazing chapter of Kagurabachi to talk about this week, and yeah, without any further ado, I just want to go and hop into it because this chapter is absolutely amazing. And hey, one of the best parts about this chapter is that we don't start off in the Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel. We actually start off in what seems to be either an art gallery or just a house of a very prolific painter, who this painter we will eventually learn the name of is Kanryu Yoshida, right? As we see, there's just some random guy here. I don't know if he's like some like art enthusiast or whatever he is, but either way, he's like, oh wow, this is an honor to behold. A truly stunning masterpiece. The phoenix is spectacular. At the moment of its death, it goes out in a blaze, only to be reborn from its own ashes. The legendary mythical bird. Depending on the region, this phoenix has many interpretations. There are a myriad of theories pertaining to its name and powers. As we see the painter of this artwork, which honestly is a very beautiful one, where we just see like this phoenix sort of like flapping its wings in the sky, looking very similar to Samura, of course, as we will be getting into. Of course, the phoenix tail is drowning from it, and a bunch of like charred and burned hands sticking up out of the ground, pretty much holding their hands up to the phoenix. It's a very beautiful visual we get here, right? As we see that Kanryu Yoshida, the painter, just is like, oh, it's no myth. And the guy's like, oh, excuse me? Like, what are you saying here, right? As Yoshida just says, this painting depicts a scene I myself witnessed during the Seitai War. And the name I recall hearing was Suzaku. As we cut back over to the Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel on that note, as of course, Hiruhiko and Chihiro are currently fighting with each other, their blades are entangled, and of course Samura had just used the move Suzaku and started to walk towards the two of them, right? As we see like all of the birds and all of the like crow feathers burning up are like coming off of Samura's body, so like, hey, from here on out, you two are powerless, right? And we see that Hiruhiko's like, oh, rebirth. So does that mean you're immortal? As Chihiro also looks by him just like, okay, that's Suzaku, the power of the Phoenix. Yet, he's left his eyes unhealed. Of course, it makes sense, because I saw a lot of discussion online after I posted last week's chapter review of like, hey, this means Samura's going to see the world again, he's going to see Iori and all this other various stuff, and while we may still have that happen, of course, it seems like also what we sort of get hinted to in this chapter is that, like, hey, Samura's going to have a little bit of a delay before he can use Suzaku again, sort of like how, like, all of the Cloud Gouger abilities, like, hey, you could only use, what was it, May, the lightning ability, once every 12 seconds or something, and that was like, hey, that's why there were 12 seconds to decide this massive battle between Chihiro and Sojo, so it seemed like the same exact thing is happening here with, Samura, but either way, it's a little bit of an interesting note to see, like, hey, Samura is still blind himself. Of course, he fights better. He believes better that way, but it's just an interesting little thing to see, right? Well, of course, the entire banquet is still going on, so Samura is still just, like, in this very hazy headspace, right? And he's sort of walking through, and he's like, okay, I got my sword out, I'm gonna cut them both. As he's sort of going through, and I do not know if this is supposed to be like, hey, he means to cut both of them down, or he's trying to finish off Hiruhiko first. Don't really quite know. Of course, he is strictly coming after Hiruhiko, but as he pretty much teleports behind them using Crow in this moment, we see that Hiruhiko amps up the banquet once again. Chihiro's getting affected, but of course uses Nishiki to pretty much balance out his ears so he's not affected by any of this. And Samura then has a moment like, hey, coming to swing his sword, I'm gonna cut them both. And we get this really awesome two-page spread where we see both Hiruhiko pretty much holding his sword like the student of freedom he is, facing it down, Chihiro having his sword clashing with it, and Samura, all of their swords touching at one singular point. It's just a really cool visual seeing the Kumeyori, Tobimune, and Inten all in this really awesome panel. It just looks absolutely amazing, right? And we see that this is causing a lot of damage to the Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel in general, as we pretty much feel like a bunch of the wood just getting like splintered out, and like these sword slashes are almost like evaporating and moving out of the pretty much building of the Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel. Honestly, it reminds me of like the whole stuff from World Trigger. I don't know if any of you guys have read that series. It's absolutely amazing. But later on, there's a character named Ikoma who's introduced, and there's something called a Kogetsu. Whirlwind Kogetsu is pretty much just like a regular sword, and Whirlwind is the ability to like extend out the slash to a longer distance. Really reminds me of not only the Kogetsu Whirlwind, but maybe a reference that a few of you guys will get a bit more is pretty much whenever Link has full hearts in the Legend of Zelda series, he's able to swing out like a little bit of a ranged sword attack, pretty much. Also reminds me of that, right? At least that was in like the very early Zelda games, right? Either way, we see all of these blades are sort of like trashing with each other, and Hiruhiko is pretty much left alone in this moment, as he's just like, uh-oh, this isn't good, right? As we see that his hand is very much shaking, and also that a few of his clothes are on fire, right? And Hiruhiko's like, oh no, this isn't good. He can use those flames to attack too. It regenerates and can probably migrate altered states, right? As he's like, okay, goes off and brushes off a lot of the fire off his clothes, pretty much like putting it out. I would never do this, but it also makes sense being that, like, I would never get in a situation where I should be caught on fire, but alas, right? Either way, Hiruhiko's just thinking, okay, Banquet won't work. All we'll do against Chihiro is make him turbocharge his Nishiki to counter it. Of course, remembering to literally what just happened when he tried to use it again, and Hiruhiko said, no, 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 you're not doing that, right? Either way, Hiruhiko just thinks like, hey, in that case, should I use my third ability? No, no, no. I'm behind the other two at this point, so I need to focus my mental capacity for now, not on quantity, but quality. He's just like, hey, I can't hesitate, I have to pour everything into my next move, as he just declares out the word, play. Of course, the ability, which I was about to explain what it was, but I forgot that the next narration we get in the chapter is literally explaining play a little bit more. It's just like, hey, play enables the user to command all objects in the vicinity and manipulate them freely. To utilize an object skillfully, the user must become familiar with its structure by playing with it repeatedly, right? The more they respect that object, the more they can wield it with precision. And I really love the visual that we get here as we see one of these geisha currently strumming a shamisen, right? Of course, playing with it, understanding more of the ability of what play is actually going to, right? Which also makes sense being that we have the 3 geisha of the Kumeiyori. Again, they're not geisha, they're another Japanese yokai folklore thing, but again, I have not done my research, so I will continue to call them geisha until somebody tells me in the comments what they actually are, and I'll write that stuff down, but until then, they are geisha here. But we, of course, remember one of the geisha who has the sort of like alcoholic poisonous drink, fits into the whole idea of banquet. The one that has the shamisen often plays with it, so that is the idea of play. And honestly, it really makes me want to go look at and find what the other geisha is real quick, so we are actually going to duplicate my tab real quick, and I think it may have been chapter number 75 or chapter number 74 where we really got the image of the 3 geisha here. Let me just go through and look at all of these. Yeah, of course, the ones that are pouring out the shot glass into, okay, it must be chapter number 76, and if it's not chapter 76, we will just continue on with the chapter, but I just want to quickly take a look at this because I think it'd be a little bit of a funny thing to look at, right? We just see the geisha. Do we see the 3 of them anywhere? We see Samura get stabbed a bunch. That's what happened last chapter. No, it doesn't look like particularly that we get any of that really good image of what the 3 geisha are. Maybe I'll look into that, so I may be able to craft a theory on, like, hey, maybe presuming what the other geisha is holding on to, maybe we can get an idea of what Kumeiyori's 3rd ability is, because it does not look at this point that Hiruhiko is going to be the one to actually sit down and use it, right? But pretty much it's like, hey, the more they respect the object, the more they can wield it with precision. As we start and look into a little bit of a flashback of Hiruhiko as a very young child. And I'm presuming this is Hiruhiko whenever Hiruhiko is 3 years old. Because of course we got some narration a few chapters ago pretty much explaining like, hey, whenever Hiruhiko was 3 years old, he first killed a man for pretty much trying to assault him in a very not good way. You know what I'm saying there, right? But we just see the image of Hiruhiko standing here with blood all over his mouth and running down his shirt, down his neck, and like almost reaching the mid parts of his shirt, right? As we just see that Hiruhiko almost has this 1,000-yard stare. As narration just says like, hey, for Hiruhiko, killing was killing. There was no deeper meaning. His respect for life was non-existent. This disdain applied even more to objects. He had nothing but contempt for all things. Thus, his compatibility of play was the worst. As it's like, oh no, Hiruhiko, you're not doing very good here, right? As we see that both Samura and Chihiro start to appear out from all the rubble here in this instant, and Hiruhiko just sort of like understands, he's like, oh no, this isn't good, right? As the entire building around them, the entirety of the Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel starts to rumble and creak. As we cut up to the rooftop of the building where we see both Sumi and Ro are sort of standing there. Also, Iori's up here too. Presumably both Moku and Ikora are also up here, but we just don't actually see them here in this moment. We just see Ro, Sumi, and Iori. As Rose is like, hey, what is this going on here, right? As we get more narration explaining, hey, this compatibility itself would be Hiruhiko's key. The true realm of an enchanted blade is infinitely mutatable by its bear. As we see blood start to run out from Hiruhiko's nose, as Chihiro just thinks like, oh, wait a second, no, you've got to be kidding. The entire hotel, as we just get an image of one of the Kumeiyori geishas pretty much enlarged the entire size of the Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel and pretty much creaking with it and moving their hands across it, playing with the entire object of the hotel itself. As on page number 11, we get this full page spread, the single page spread, where we just see a panel, almost like one of the Kagurabachi story panels, which we will be getting later here in this chapter. But it's just pretty much the geisha is holding their hands on either side of the panel, and we see the Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel just get ripped, ruined, and torn apart in this moment. It's just like, wow, Hiruhiko is using play on the entire hotel. I will be real with you, I was not expecting this, but it does look extremely, extremely cool. What else can I say, right? As Chihiro is pretty much like backing up through all this mess here, he goes sort of like, ha ha ha, look at this, right? He's like, ha ha, you all feeling powerless? I destroyed the building, right? Going through all of this various stuff, right? As we see on the top floor, there's a lot of rumbling going on as, like, Sumi's holding Iori. We just see, like, the entire building is rumbling around each other, right? As Samura even thinks, like, oh, what is this? It's no hallucination. Hiruhiko is physically destroying the building around us. And we see through all of these cracks that have now formed in the building, all of the dead sorcerers that Hiruhiko is, I guess, quote-unquote, playing with, are now getting up and going to attack both Chihiro and Samura. As we see Chihiro's thought process, he's just like, oh, is he trying to bury me in rubble and corpses? Like, hey, this is some scale no amount of slashing will be able to cut through, right? And he just thinks like, hey, his wounds are deep, so how does he have this kind of energy? As we get even more narration just saying like, hey, his contempt for everything, his nihilism towards killing. As Hiruhiko just says out loud, Chihiro, you alone are special. You gave me meaning. As of course Hiruhiko remembers back to theater wherever both Chihiro and Hiruhiko really first had their first big battle, as Chihiro just said like, hey, no, that's why we seek to kill each other, right? As Hiruhiko just thinks out loud, with that goal, I can persevere indefinitely, right? Or he actually says I can persevere infinitely, but I think indefinitely sounds a little bit cooler, right? But either way, Hiruhiko just does all this, opens up his mouth, screams this aloud, blood running down his entire face, right? As we also look over to Samura, who's really facing the same sort of thing where all of these other animated sorcerers are coming, or I guess just like sword wielders. I don't know if they're sorcerers or just like people with swords pretty much, right? But they're all going towards Samura too, right? As Hiruhiko looks over and just is like, hey, Samura, get out of my ways! He also just thinks like, hey, immortality. No. Just like the Cloud Gouger needed an interval to recharge May, there must be some limitation. I'll overwhelm him with pure mass. As of course, all of these animated, played-with sorcerers are chasing after Samura. As Samura's in, she's like, God, what about this? And pretty much jumps out of the Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel, sprouting out these massive wings from his back here in a moment. I don't know if this is one of his ability uses of, like, Crow specifically. I mean, it also makes sense being it's like, hey, the phoenix wings from Suzaku, but I also think it'd also just be cool. It's like, hey, this is a byproduct of Crow, like, biting all those feathers together and being able to fly with them. We don't really know how this ability works, but it is pretty cool nonetheless, right? As here he could just think like, oh, look at that. He's running away, right? As eventually we also see that all of these animated sorcerers are pretty much being piled up on top of each other and are chasing Samura all the way up into the sky, up towards the roof of the Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel, right? And here he could just is like, oh, look at that. He's no longer relevant. Now, it's time for our showdown, Chihiro. As he's like, hey, now to break the deadlock, show me your true realm. As we just get a look of Chihiro in the moment, who looks like he is about to do a EI White Purity style on Hiruhiko, as Hiruhiko also just looks up to the sky. As we get a Kagurabachi story panel, where we see that Samura is up in the sky, pretty much flying right in front of the sun. We see his crow wings, the bottom of them are all on fire, and we see two phoenix tails sprouting from beneath Samura. As we just see Samura look down to this pile, this pillar of all these animated played with sorcerers, as Samura from up in the sky grabs his blade and uses the EI White Purity style with Tobimune and goes down and slices through all of the sorcerers, from all the way up the roof of the Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel all the way down towards Hiruhiko. As here he could just think like, oh no, he's blasting through everything to get to me. Does he not care if everything else goes up in flames? As we get a bit more narration about Suzaku, of course, Tobimune's third power. As it says like, hey, Tobimune's third power, Suzaku, the power of the immortal bird to self-combust and rise again. However, he's already further evolved that power in previous battles. In his true realm, he can apply that boon to more than just himself. as we get an image of course, the painter from earlier in the chapter. Of course, his name was Kanryu Yoshida. And we see an image of him during the war. He looked very much the same, but we see that he had actually lost his right arm. As we then see in the moment, of course, where Kanryu Yoshida is talking to this guy about his painting of the Phoenix, he just says, "Those flames are flames of universal mercy." As we see that he raises up his right arm in this moment. As the narration just continues, Seiichi Samura's Suzaku flames reached everything afflicted by the altered state Hiruhiko inflicted with Kumeyori. The first time Hiruhiko ever cared sincerely for anything or anyone, his all-or-nothing rampaging blitz, in a single moment, was completely nullified. As we see all of the flames of Suzaku are spreading everywhere in this moment, as the Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel is rampaging on itself and getting ready to fall to the ground in pain and causing all this death and destruction. We see Suzaku's flames go over the tiles, repair the parts of the floor, and repair the Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel to its state before Hiruhiko used Kumeyori's play to destroy it. As we see that Hiruhiko is laying up against a wall, blood covering his entire body, and he's just like, no, it can't be, right? As we also get a look at the Kumeyori laying on the ground of the Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel, and Hiruhiko's arm also severed once again. Of course, this seems to be Hiruhiko's left arm. I don't think his right arm is also taken off, but hey, we have had 77 chapters of this series, really only like 25 where Hiruhiko has been a part of the series. I guess I think Hiruhiko appeared in chapter, was it 48 or 49? I forget, and this is a point where I'm also going to go to the YouTube channel, because I remember I titled that video, it was A New Challenger Approaches. So let me type that in. It looks like it was chapter number 48, wherever Hiruhiko was first introduced at the end of the chapter, and then from in chapter number 49 and on, he was sort of like this bigger character who Chihiro interacted with. I think they were like fighting with all the blood cranes on the train either way, right? So I think that was chapter number 49. Then chapter number 50 was meeting Samura. Chapter number 41 was also understanding more about Samura. 52, I think, was more of Samura's stuff at the Senkutsuji Temple, and 53 was the battle between Chihiro and Hiruhiko, where like the whole big of like the inner darkness expanding out of Chihiro pretty much. Yes, I'm just flexing because I know too much about this series, but either way, we see that one of Hiruhiko's arms is cut off in very few chapters after he's been really introduced, right? I don't know if this beats a few of the characters in Bleach, being like, hey, one of the big things about Bleach was like, hey, just sever all of your arms for the sake of it, pretty much, right? But Samura goes over, picks up the Kumeyori off the ground, and just is like, hey, this time it's no illusion. As he looks behind him and just says, oh, now then. As we see standing behind him is Chihiro in tin in his hand and the EI White Purity style stance in motion. And that is where we end this absolutely goated chapter of Kagurabachi. I don't know what else to say. This chapter is just so incredibly awesome. Going through, seeing all of the abilities of Kumeyori, seeing the play, being the whole destruction of the Kyoto Bloodshed Hotel, and then understanding what Samura's true realm actually is. And yes, it is a power that makes so much sense for Samura's character. It is not a power to absolutely go and kill. It is really the power of a pacifist. Which is that's a very good title. I'm probably naming this video The Power of a Pacifist now, because damn, I really like that, right? But either way, just great chapter going through, seeing all of this, seeing Samura go back through, heal pretty much the entire building and everything else around him, until we eventually see, I honestly really like the introduction of the character of Kanryu Yoshida. I really don't think he's ever going to have any other important parts in this series, but being that just like, hey, he's this painter who fought in the Seitai War. Of course, he was probably part of the military at the time, so he was forced into it. Painting this picture of Suzaku and seeing just and understanding, hey, Samura's ability is to help heal other people, which is something that he ended up helping Kanryu here with in the moment. It's just a really cool little moment that I absolutely enjoy. Of course, all the three-way battle stuff is pretty cool, and I don't think Hiruhiko is down and out for sure here. Yes, Hiruhiko may be lacking with the Kume-yori, so eventually he's going to end up dying unless Samura goes through and like pseudo kills him, but I don't understand why he'd want to do that, being that he strictly just wants to kill him pretty much because he knows like the dangerous and power level that he is. We also see a little bit of Hiruhiko's backstory here, which is also pretty cool, and if anything, I really think that Todo is going to come through, get out Hiruhiko, maybe take the arm with him, maybe not, and with that, we're going to be pretty much leaving all of Hiruhiko's stuff on hold here for a little while, but I have to say, I really love the panel where Hiruhiko's just like crying, just saying like, no, it can't be, as of course, he's just been absolutely destroyed the one time that he tried to use all of his power. Hey, Samura's just on a whole different level, and it's something that like even Chihiro was trying to say last time was like, hey, you're just underestimating Samura. You, me, and him, we're all different from one another. And it's just a really cool little tie-in and everything working together, and I am just extremely hyped to see what will be happening next time in the whole battle of, hey, Chihiro versus Samura. It's going to be absolutely goated, and the big sad part is, hey, manga is on break next week. Of course, it is Golden Week in Japan, so you're not getting any weekly Shonen Jump, so it is actually going to be 2 whole Sundays before we get Shonen Jump again, which is like, you are kidding me. The next chapter of Kagurabachi is going to be on, what is that? It is going to be, yes, Sunday, May 11th. I am currently in college right now. I will be done with college by the time the next chapter of Kagurabachi comes out, which is absolutely insane just to sit down here and think about, but this was such a good chapter of Kagurabachi. Really, really enjoyed it. Again, that was chapter number 77, no longer relevant. Of course, going towards Hiruhiko's whole things of like, hey, no longer relevant, but still, I want to imagine this is just Takeru Hokuzono just having fun of us, putting it right next to Hakuri on the title page, because, oh my gosh, it is just so funny. And one more time before I wrap up this video, let me just gloat about this title page one more time. We see Hakuri here, we see Chihiro, we see Iori. Of course, all of these characters who have massive daddy issues. Well, I don't think Chihiro particularly had massive daddy issues. It's more of just he has big dead daddy issues. Well, I guess Iori also sort of had dead daddy issues. I mean, I guess now technically Hakuri had dead daddy issues and Iori did not remember her father, so whatever. Going through all of this, just an absolutely amazing lead color page. Again, let me also just talk about the illustration that Takeru Hokuzono did for the banner of Weekly Shonen Jump, as we just see Chihiro pretty much sitting here with like a little bit of like a controller in his hands, his headphones on. It just looks really, really cool. And of course, we also get like a little mini, because of course the whole idea of this issue of Weekly Shonen Jump is like all of the characters gaming with each other, which is also really nice to see, being that like, hey, only the top 6 series got like big character illustrations. Of course, we see like One Piece, Ichi the Witch, Sakamoto Days, Blue Box, Witch Watch, and of course Kagurabachi is part of this. It definitely looks like Kagurabachi is towards the far end of it, so it's like, it may not be the biggest thing right now, but it's still, Kagurabachi is doing wonders in Weekly Shonen Jump, and I just can't wait till we get next chapter, because this one was absolutely amazing. But yeah, we've all out of the way. Again, thank you guys so very much for watching this video on Kagurabachi chapter number 77. Again, this chapter was titled No Longer Relevant. Rip Hakuri. So sad to see you go. But hey, if you did enjoy this video, I've talked about Kagurabachi plenty of other times on this channel. I've actually been talking about it since like chapter number 44. So if you want to hear any of my thoughts on any of the chapters between now and chapter number 44, well, go check out all those videos. They'll be linked in a playlist not only in the description box of this video, but also on the end card of this YouTube video also. But yeah, fall out of the way. Just thank you guys so very much for watching this video on Kagurabachi chapter number 77, and I'll catch you guys next time. This will be Glowplasma 231, signing out.